Hi there, my name is Per Magnus, and I'll be talking to you. I'll be describing the Agile team process, a more advanced Agile team process. We're assuming that you know Scrum already, so we'll be talking about it from a wider perspective. There's another video that may interest you, which is called What is an Advanced Agile Team? And this is like the add-on, a more advanced add-on to that video, just so you know. So let's proceed. So this is the Advanced Agile Team, having fun using an Agile team process for Advanced Agile teams. And we're using this process, we're using this in 3 of our courses. The Basic Scrum and Agile Master, the Advanced Scrum and Agile Master, and the Advanced Agile Teams course. So let's go ahead. So let's look at some design patterns of basically, what is a design pattern, you may ask yourself. And basically a design pattern is, a setup way of doing things. So that's what we're looking at right now. This is the big picture. An advanced Agile team, even some basic teams, need to be able to communicate a perspective where some stakeholders can communicate and deal with and talk about and think about things on a quarter level, or release level, or program increment level. So that's roughly different names for a 2 to 3 month period where we're saying, over this period of time, we will deliver this cool stuff. And that is then split up in a number of sprints or a number of iterations, depending on what Agile terminology you'll use. So this would be like 2-week sprints delivered over a 10-week or 12-week period. We need to remember that in Agile, there are 2 different levels of planning. There's the high-level planning and there's the low-level planning. And basically, most of Agile, most of Scrum is about make things happen, deliver stuff, execute. But there's also a very important planning bit where we, during an existing round, whether that's a quarter round or PI round or a sprint round, we actually spend about 10% of our time planning for the next round of things. And sometimes that's called refinement. So refinement is a good term. So what we're seeing here actually is that while we're executing and spending 90% of our time doing stuff, not thinking about things, not analyzing things, we're building things during execute here. We're also spending about 10% of our time planning, preparing for the next round of execution. And we do that on the quarter level and we do that on the sprint level. So it's the same pattern, same design pattern. Learning is key to success here. It's really important to understand. Usually we tend to have project learnings or lessons learned or something way back, and then we plan based on that learning, and then the impact of that learning happens here. In an Agile point of view, it's really important that we're learning as we go. So even though we're simultaneously planning, that plan is not based on previous learning, it's based both on previous and current learning. So we're learning as we go. So these 10% of the work time is picking up lots of good ideas from the 90% of delivering, building, creating value time that we have. So this is what it would look like if we add both the refinement bit or planning bit and execution bit. So we have this perspective, right? That's really important that an advanced Agile team can have this perspective, can communicate this perspective and talk to stakeholders around this more complete perspective. Many basic Agile teams only live down here executing the current sprint, right? Becoming an advanced Agile team is really making the journey of having, this planning horizon, this way of communicating to the outer world that this picture symbolizes. The output then, what is the output? Naturally, you plan, you refine the backlog, you build a backlog, as you know. Important thing is also that to update your calendar. Basic Scrum does not have a calendar, but Agile has always had a calendar. Calendar may be very important for you as a team. It varies from context to context, If you've got a lot of stakeholders you need to communicate with and you cannot reach them just like that, you need a really good calendar where you slot your stakeholders in before you know you need them. You will be too slow if you always go chasing people when you need them and they have a 3-4 day or 2-week horizon until you need them. That makes you very slow. Execution, actually, we create, results. The stores we have done, creates some kind of results. really, really important for an advanced Agile team is to verify the value you're supposed to be creating. Not just delivering stuff or backlog items, but you're actually showing that you have a business impact, you have organizational impact. So verification of organizational and business impact value is really critical for an advanced Agile team. If you're a basic Agile team or just starting, you don't have to, take a grip of everything from the start. But having this perspective from the start is a good first thing to do. So let's now look at the 3-month horizon, a 10-week horizon, a 12-week horizon. And we can call that the program increment, which is a PI. We can call this a quarter. We can call this the release horizon. There are lots of different names. Since SAFe has made this popular, program increment to PI may win the war on what to call this. We used to call this release planning years ago, actually. But now when we release things every year, every day, the word release planning may be strange. But it's really a commitment horizon, your planning horizon of about 9 to 14 weeks, So this is what happens if we simplify the quarter process flow. So this is about a quarter, so 10 weeks, 14 weeks, something like that, depending on your Agile methodology and what you have chosen for or what you've chosen for yourself. We start with something called business strategy, right? Over here we start with business strategy, which is right to the left on the screen, and then we do the product strategy, right? So we need to understand our product strategy better. That goes for a team too, and it varies depending on your context, is how much of this you own, right? If you're in a train or in a tribe, other people may be driving some of these processes. If you're just by yourself as a team, you will need to drive these processes by yourself. And quite often there's a bit of each. You may be part of a lending train, for example, in a bank, but you may be sitting on the risk analysis part, or maybe you have a risk analysis process step or system or something that you're responsible for. For that specific system that you're responsible for, you need some kind of ownership. You have your own stakeholders. You need to manage them by yourself. So most teams in the world will need to own some of this process, I would say. All right, so you update your strategy, you update your product strategy, and then you start creating your backlog for the next quarter round. So these will be coarse grain backlog items here. You do a quarter review of what goes on, and you go do release planning for the next quarter, the next increment. And you also need to update the calendar. The calendar is quite important in many situations. And again, that varies from context to context. The Agile calendar and the Agile backlog are two primary output out of this quarter process flow. If we want to look at this in some more detail, this is a picture of what happens in, what are the practices here that will help you with your business strategy. These are practices and tools and thinking tools and Agile practices help you with the product strategy, etc., etc. So this is just showing you that there are lots of tools available for supporting you with your business strategy update, your product strategy update, and we need to use them in an Agile way, right? So we need to do a business strategy update and a product strategy update relatively quickly, lightweight, and focused. So this is, if we take this quarter process flow and split it up into planning and execution. So the planning bit would be your strategy updates, your backlog workshops, or your Kanban workshops. It's important to point out that the backlog workshops may be 1 or 2, 2 or 3 2-day sessions you have with people flying in, or you may do your backlog workshops in micro increments where you just build your Kanban for the next quarter, and then we end up with release planning or program increment planning or quarter planning or whatever you want to call it, master planning. Some people call it master planning, where you output is the coarse grain backlog, the few rough things you have for the quarter, and also the calendar. The execution from a quarter level point of view, on the quarter rhythm level, we don't do a whole lot of execution on a quarter level from an Agile point of view. We may have a mid-quarter, mid-PI review. We have a PI review and retrospective at the end of the program increment or release or quarter, whatever you want to call it. Naturally, a lot of execution things goes on to coordinate the quarter level perspective, but these happen on a sprint rhythm or week rhythm. That's the important point. On the quarter rhythm, there's usually not a whole lot of execution issues. You may have some synchronization across the rest of your company that you want to add here. This is just a basic picture. On the sprint level, we have the same thing. We plan the next round simultaneously to executing the current round. We do it the same way. And this is a way of looking at it from a planning or refinement point of view. Most teams have refinement meetings once per week, right? But there are also something called continuous refinement. So that's usually how you plan and you make sure that you're ready to go, you're ready to hit the ground running. So this planning, the 10% of the time you spend on refining, means that your backlog is really super clear and your calendar is really super finished when you get into the next round of executions. You hit the ground running, which means the sprint planning can really take anything from 28 minutes to 58 minutes. It should be really small. So you should have done most of your planning in the previous sprint when you start the current sprint. You've got a daily stand-up, you've got the daily demo, you've got the daily review, the sprint review and the sprint retrospective. So these are just standard, Scrum/Agile things. The thing we want to emphasize here is the importance of the daily demo and having a prototyping cycle in your team. So that's really part of almost a basic Scrum team should do this too. Definitely when you get into the advanced level, you should be doing conscious prototyping, conscious experimentation. It makes you very fast, it makes you hit the goal more correct. So that's really important. So you need to build your standard and your specific calendar. So this is an example of the standard 2-week sprint, 2-week iteration calendar. So you need to really make sure that you know when everything happens and what happens. So this is a standard calendar. And these are like the summary of the practices of an advanced Agile team. So in the basic course, our Scrum and Agile Master course will be covering some of this. In the advanced course, we'll be covering most of this. We'll be definitely be talking about everything on this. You'll be practicing on most of it, and we'll be trying to do this. So we've got like quarter level thinking things, and we've got a sprint rhythm on things. So this is just another way of describing these are the kind of practices an advanced Agile team should be able to do. And actually, when we talk business strategy and product strategy, there's a lot of double clicking on that. There are a lot of sub practices we need to understand, such as creating personas, Into the Sun, which is a vision workshop, or postcard from the future. We can use value tables, we can use objectives and key results. So there are lots of sub practices. We'll be talking about those too. So this is just a high level summary. And if you have any more questions, just feel free to reach out to me or Jacob. Okay, so we'll be happy to answer those questions. And I hope I'm not being too lengthy, and you can live with this. So thank you for listening this far, and see you around, perhaps at one of these courses. If not, I hope you got some good use of this. This is an alternative way of describing the Agile process. So be good, have fun, and have a great day.